you can also dial in. And so we will go through the budgets for engineering, highway, DPW administration, facilities, maintenance, snow and ice, fleet maintenance, solid waste, general fund, crematory, cemetery, parks, and forestry. We will, as Mr. Howard mentioned a few moments ago, be taking a vote at the end of each budget. We will allow time for public questions if there are any people from the public who are on the call or on the meeting. And with that, I'm calling the meeting to order. And I'll certainly entertain a discussion or questions about some process things or general questions. So, Mr. Howard, I think you had some questions.
Yes, I did. So good afternoon. Bill, these are directed towards you. So
Bill being Bill Balboni, who's the head of Public Works, is that correct? Or Bill Coy?
I can't see the others that have joined. I only see the, okay, yep, Tim is Public Works, and I can tell you for engineering, James Downey will be here for engineering. Myself and Jody both will answer. We have questions relative to DPW administration, facilities. We'll have a new facilities director in attendance. That's Carl. Snow and ice will be Tim Balboni. Fleet will be myself and Jody. And solid waste, myself and Jody. And crematory and cemetery will Diane McGuire will be available. And Nick Fiella will be here for parks and forestry.
Great. Thank you for coming, and thanks for all you do for the town.
Thank you.
Bruce, any other comments or questions?
Yeah. So, Bill, I just wanted to make you aware that I'm first of all, let me say I'm pleased to see that the budgets have been worked out to the extent that they have, and we'll be looking at the details throughout the afternoon. Two areas of particular concern for me, I wanted to make you aware of. One is overtime.
Okay.
I want to make sure that we're spending the department's overtime judiciously.
I can tell you that in general with overtime use is mostly because of staff shortages, in particular in highway. You'll see what we budget for our salaries obviously is much higher than what we have been expending just because we have so many vacant positions. So right. I try to accommodate the needs of the community. The employees have been working Saturdays, and sometimes they'll come in early at 5 o'clock in the morning, even in the fleet division as well. Right now, we're down to one master mechanic and we have 3 vacant master mechanic positions and 1 lube technician position that's vacant. So we're extremely light in many of the divisions. We have been fortunate. We are hiring a master mechanic starting Monday and hopefully a lube technician in a couple of weeks. So we're making
that's great
progress on filling these positions, but because of the vacancies, it's required us to fill the gaps in with overtime.
Okay. So I guess I want to make sure that you're aware of this issue so that you're looking at overtime on an ongoing basis to make sure that it's being spent judiciously. Okay. And that's really it.
No, absolutely. And, periodically we print out the total overtime usage to track where we are to make sure that we are on track and staying within our overall budget that we projected for personnel services.
Yep. Okay. There was no, I'm not going to go into it. All right. So the other topic of concern to me is actually in our capital requests. Pretty much every capital request that I've seen for a vehicle has included a snow plow. And I just want to make sure that we're buying snowplows when we need them, replacing them when we need them. I'm sure that the maintenance, the crews are up maintaining them to the best of their ability, but they're also expensive. So I want to make sure we're not buying more snowplows than we need on an ongoing basis.
Sure, no, agreed. And again, it's something where we look at some of, some of the electrical connections, the hydraulics, also parts of the snowplow frame. A lot of these things over time get damaged. So, they do need to be replaced. Even though the actual metal plow itself can be in good condition, it's a lot of times it's the other components of the plow.
Understood. Okay. And I also believe that you've started more detailed inventory and tracking of vehicles, and snowplows are included in that, and I thank you for that. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Coyle, as someone who's also in the facilities business, I appreciate the challenges with managing overtime. We're facing the same issues where I work.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so any other questions? I don't see anyone from the public here, so we'll jump right in with engineering if that's okay. So the floor is yours, sir.
Okay, in the engineering budget, for the most part, there haven't been too many changes. I can highlight a couple of things that jumped out when I looked at it. I guess the biggest thing was pavement markings. If you look at what we've budgeted, we did keep it level funded, but year-to-date expenditure was $42,000, and that's because we will continue in the spring with the line painting. So we will expend those the funds that have been appropriated, the $75,000. Most of the items are fairly level funded. The salaries and wages went up 4.4% due to contractual negotiations, and then also some different items as well, but mostly contractual. James, is there anything that you want to add to engineering?
Thank you, Bill. No, I think you covered it. I mean, if there are any questions, I'd be here to try to answer those.
Your comment about the pavement markings being spent in the last half, very consistent with the few years that I've been serving on this subcommittee. So I think, Mr. Young, if you're new to this, so. All right. Are there any questions for Mr. Coyle on the engineering budget?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I see that thank you all for coming, by the way, and I appreciate the work you do. I see that you received 1.9, almost 2 million state and federal grants. Do you have any expectation on, or what's your long-term planning? Are you going to continue to try to supplement your budgets that way? Is there anything on the horizon we should be looking for? Thank you.
There's always grants that we pursue. There's municipal vulnerability preparedness grants that we will, again, each year we would typically apply for. There's hazard mitigation grants. As these become available, we'll apply for them. Chapter 90, which is our roadway improvement program, we were fortunate this year. We typically get about 1.6 to 1.7 million in Chapter 90 funds. This year we are getting, James, I believe it's about 700,000 to 800,000 additional in the what they term the millionaire's tax. So that's we're fortunate that'll help fund some additional roadway work. So certainly a lot of these grants do come up every year, and we're fortunate in town to have a grant writer and is very successful in obtaining grants. So we'll continue applying for them, and hopefully we'd be able to get additional grants to offset the budget.
Thank you for the answer, and I appreciate any further going after those grants because it's a great resource. Thank you.
Mr. Howard.
Hi, thank you. You identified a couple of open positions in the engineering group. Actually, are these all in the engineering group? Any progress on filling those open slots?
Yes, actually, we interviewed today for the town engineer position. So James Downey was previously the acting town engineer, is now the assistant DPW director. So that left that position open. We interviewed candidate today that I think is a very strong candidate. So we're hopeful to be able to fill that position shortly. We did also for a transportation engineer. We advertised in the Mass Municipal Association website. We have not received any applicants. Our biggest need currently is the town engineer position. So we're very hopeful that we'll be able to fill that position in the couple of weeks.
And the salaries and wages lines, are those funded to the point to support the new hires?
Yes, it is.
Great, thank you.
You are.
All right, any further questions? Would someone like to make a motion to approve the recommended select board budget of $735.41?
Move to approve.
Okay,
Second.
Mr. Young seconds. Any discussion? Okay, Mr. Howard, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Okay, Mr. Young?
Yes.
Okay, and I will vote yes too if I'm allowed to vote.
You are allowed to vote.
There we go. Okay, one of the things I neglected to do was call attendance. So just for the record, I note that Mr. Howard is here and Mr. Young is here, and I'm here too. So there you go. Okay, moving on.
Can you see me?
No, I can't. Mr. Lawler, you're here
Mr.
now.
Lawler's here. Yeah, I was just about to say, point of order. Mr. Lawler is here. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for the point of order,
I
Mr.
didn't
Young.
see you. So Mr. Lawler, on the vote to approve the engineering, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. I was looking for you, but I couldn't see it. So great. Thanks for speaking up.
The computer issues. That's what it's all about. You know, they don't-
No, it's probably a me issue. All right, on to Highway Division DPW. So who's speaking for that?
I'll start off and then I can defer to Tim on any specific questions that you might have.
Okay,
I think for the most part, we were fairly level funded. But I think as you pointed out earlier, we tend to be spending more on overtime because of the lack of positions that we've been able to fill. Although we've been budgeting as though those positions could be filled, it is quite possible that we may, given the shortage of people that have CDL licenses and want to do this type of work, we may still have difficulty filling these positions. But overall, the personal services budget is only a 1.2%. I think it's actually a decrease because we've lost a few people. So I don't think there's anything significantly, certainly increasing on the highway budget. But Tim is here as well if you have any specific questions relative to the operations.
could I have Tim's last name, please?
By Tim Balboni.
Balboni, okay. Got it. Thank you. All right, Mr. Howard, you have a question?
I do. It's actually just a suggestion. Bill, I'd suggest you talk with finance and see if there's any way to spread the cost of crushing services across years. I know that you only engage in those services every other year, and I'm good with that, but I think as we go into fiscal year 26 and 27, there's going to be a lot of pressure on the budgets. So having that crushing service show up every other year may be more of a challenge. And I think it's important that we provide for that line item.
Which service are you referring to, Mr. Howard?
It's actually in the write-up.
Okay.
It's the 25,000 for a crushing service. It's right at go to page 1. It's at the end of the first paragraph under expenditures.
Oh, crushing. Okay, thank you. I couldn't quite hear you.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah. It actually shows up as a line item in the
Yeah.
budget as well.
I can talk to finance to see if there's a way to do that. I know typically at the end of the fiscal year, we have to close out the accounts. Whether or not there's a way of carrying it over. The only way I could imagine would be is if we split it and then, if we had crushing occurring in July, you might be able to carry over from June into July, but we can talk to finance to see if there's a way of doing that.
Yep. Just along that same line, the more that you can show metrics in each division year over year to show the demand for your services, for the department services, and how those demands increase. I really, in speaking with Derek Brindisi, it's clear that future budgets may see more pressure, so we want to help you maintain your funding going forward. I guess is the bottom line.
Absolutely, and we can take a look at that. I can tell you that I'm sure you're aware the demand is increases every year, and especially with now that we have C-Click Fix, and speaking with Tim, we get a lot of requests through that program now, in addition to emails and phone calls, and it's a great thing that people have different avenues to reach out to us, and certainly we can appreciate that, and it's helpful, but it makes the workload it's only increasing. But I can appreciate trying to develop some metrics so that we can show you from year to year how the call volume and the workload has increased.
Right, exactly. Could you also discuss the plan to add a position to assist the highway manager?
Sure, this was
This is under new initiative.
Sure, that was a position that we were proposing, just because there is such a demand from the highway manager for Tim Balboni, trying to keep up with the workload and trying to meet the demands of the residents and the businesses. This person was going to be Tim Balboni's assistant and handle additional work to help him get the crews going every day, provide work assignments, and even potentially cover when he's on vacation, when he's out sick, overtime calls at night. I mean, Tim gets calls all hours of the night, almost every other night, and it's a lot. So that position we felt was important to provide some relief to his position and benefit to the community itself.
So is that position included in the select board budget?
I don't believe it was. My understanding is that I believe it's been requested in the past. I don't believe it was funded.
So yes, last year during this subcommittee hearing, it came up and we rejiggered the general expenses to be able to support that new initiative, and then it was voted down at A&F. So gotcha.
Right.
So okay, so I see it's not there. All right.
We were proposing it, but it did not get
Did not survive the cut. Okay. Great.
It was sliced and diced.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the subcommittee members, A&F members? All right. If not, I'd certainly entertain a motion to approve the highway budget.
Move to approve.
Second?
Second,
That was Tim Lawler.
yes.
All right. Any discussion? All right. For the vote, Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Lawler,
Yes.
and Mr. Young.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you. On to DPW administration.
Okay, DPW administration, I think for the most part, there were no significant changes. You'll see longevity and cell phone and sick leave buyback, those numbers change, but I think mainly as a result of personnel changes, the result of those differences. But total increase in personnel services, personnel services was 2.6%.
And I note, I believe that the overall budget request is down 2.5%. So,
I'm sorry, down to 2.6. Thank you.
yeah, okay, great. Any questions from committee members? Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve as presented?
Move to approve.
All right.
Second,
All right. Mr. Howard.
Yes.
All right. Mr. Lawler.
yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Great. All right. We are here in building maintenance.
Okay, building maintenance, the salary and wages was increased by 5.8%. We've had some new positions filled, and we have the new facilities manager with us today as well, and it's Kyle Anderson, and surely welcome Kyle to jump in to add anything if he wishes to. I will say the one thing I was just looking into, and honestly, I don't know where it says restore. I'm not sure what that is. So, and maybe somebody else does, but it was 67,000 back in 2024. It was not requested or recommended, but it's just something that jumped out at me, whether or not it was a position that they're looking to restore. But that obviously is not in the budget. And total increase of 1.6%. So if there's any questions relative to personnel services, be happy to answer them. And I also have Kyle with me if there's any questions relative to any of the other expenses in the line items.
Bruce, before I give you the floor, Jeanette, would you happen to remember what that restore line was about? Or
Could you repeat the question, Joe?
What?
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. Up on line, the second line in under building maintenance in these personnel lines, there's a line for restore of 67,000. You remember what that was about by any chance? And if you don't, that's okay.
Jody, do you remember which position was restored? It was one that had been.
Okay, I can't understand you, but maybe someone else can.
No, I don't, Jeanette. I
Okay.
don't have the back paperwork here.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Howard.
Thank you. The increase in overtime is substantial. Can you speak to that, please?
I think a lot of that, the overtime and building maintenance has been through events held at Memorial Hall. So Kyle, am I correct in stating that I think we've had a lot of events on the weekends and a lot of need for coverage for custodial services on Saturdays and Sundays and weeknights. It's been significant. I mean, the good news is there's been a lot of events that have been held there, so I'm sure that's generating revenue. But that has then resulted in us covering the cost for custodial services.
They don't compensate the division for it?
I'm not aware that they do. So if they, I'm not sure where the funding, if it goes into a revolving account, I'd have to check with finance on whether or not.
I mean, that's a 95% increase. I mean, that's huge.
It is a big increase. I can tell you there is a lot of overtime in that division in custodial services in particular. And they also cover when there's people out at the transfer station. This past year, we had somebody out on workman's comp. So we had coverage all weekend long while that person was out. So there's been a lot of hand on those services.
Okay. Again, it's it's important that you're on top of the overtime because it is substantial in your department. Okay, and then just down below in the expenses, I see reduction of 13,000 and an increase in 13,000. Is that just a repositioning of the expense?
I don't, I think it's just coincidental that it's 13,000. I think the roofing services just went down 13,000, and we've had a lot of calls for pest control, so that line item was increased. That could be even a hornet's nest that we might have down on Water Street near one of the park areas, just on the side of the street. We'll get pest control in there. It could be mice that people have in their buildings, could be any type of ants and different, it's calls for pest control just increased this past year.
Okay, Jeanette, I see a hand coming up from you. Did you find out the answer?
Can you hear me now, Joe?
Yes, I can hear you now.
All right, I just wanted to answer your question about the position restore for
Yes.
FY '24. That was the HVAC position.
HVAC? Okay, got it.
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Jeanette. Are there any other questions?
Sorry, yes. If you scroll down to the very bottom, the diesel generator drops from 7,200 to 200. Just wanted to make sure that was correct.
All the way down.
Bottom line.
Yep. See where you are. Question. I know we just had a new generator installed here at DPW, so I'm wondering if something.
That may be it. It may be that
Right.
the 7,200 was for maintenance of the generator, and since it's
Or
new,
rental. Or
Yeah.
rental.
That's what I suspect. It was probably significant maintenance costs or potential for if the need for a rental. That was just replaced in the past few months.
Okay, so it looks like it's correct. I just wanted to be sure it wasn't a mistake.
I believe it's correct.
Good.
All right, any other questions? Is there a motion perhaps from Mr. Young to stir things up a little bit to move as approved, as presented?
I move that motion, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Howard, we'll get to you, Mr. Lord, at some point. All right.
Beat you, Tim.
Further discussion. All right, Mr. Howard, how do you vote?
Yes.
All right. Mr. Lawler, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Young, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Okay, and I vote yes as well, so passes unanimously. All right. Snow, ice. One of my favorite ones.
My favorite topic too. Okay. Snow and ice. I know that Lynn had increased the snow and ice budget for this fiscal year. And I believe it was somewhere in the order of a $600,000 increase. So original was 705, we're up to 1.3 million total. And I think that was based on, and I don't remember if it was a 3-year average or a 5-year average that she looked at, but certainly it made sense to increase it to get it more in line with what the average snow and ice budget is. So obviously this year we've been fortunate, it hasn't been too significant. I know Tim was looking at, I don't know if he was able to try to get some numbers of where we were to date. But I know Jeanette had run some numbers back earlier in January. We're at 94,000. We've had a lot of salt deliveries recently, so we have expended obviously additional funds.
So So this is a budget that has some regulation around it when it comes to, for example, its ability to carry a deficit into the next fiscal year, and the finance team in the town manages this very closely. So,
Yeah, that's correct. The only line item that we can deficit spend, and I think it is good fiscal management and responsibility to the budget what we believe it to be, so that we don't deficit spend, and then hopefully that those funds can go back into the general fund and possibly free cash.
and then what happens when this trues up at the end of the year, I believe, is part of fall town meeting. If there's an overage of that budget, surplus funds are used to cover that every year. So again, it's a very closely managed budget. Are there any questions from the committee? All right, Mr. Lawler, just to stir things up, would you care to offer a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Okay. Mr. Howard.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Howard.
I have just a
Sure.
just-
Go ahead, Tim. Mr. Lawler.
actually I'm sorry, Joe. I got a little late on this. On
right.
the overtime on, as we're talking about snow and ice, is that overtime based on the fluctuations of, i.e., storms and critical situations that happen? Explain that overtime of 281.
Sure, this is specifically for snow and ice operations.
Okay.
So but any of the crews that are out plowing the road, salting the road, sanding, also the fleet staff that come in to maintain the equipment as the breakdowns occur, that would all come out of snow and ice overtime if it's an overtime situation. But this is specific to overtime relative to a snow and ice event.
So put it another way, if somebody's plowing or responding to support the snow and ice removal during their normal working hours, that expense does not show up here.
That one, I would actually defer to Jody on now, because I know it gets very confusing on if we call them in for overtime before 7 a.m. I believe they stay on, they get time and a half, I believe plus 15% if they're called in for snow and ice operations. And if they're called in before 7 a.m., I believe that carries into the daytime until we call the end of the storm. We call the end of the storm at 10 a.m. I believe they revert back to their normal pay. Jody, if I didn't explain that right, feel free to jump in and clarify.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
And it's covered with the overtime costs.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm sorry. So the 281 is specifically for overtime and for anyone that is called in above and beyond the DPW staff, quote unquote, salaried staff.
Right, exactly. Myself and Tim, any of us that are salary, we don't get paid overtime. We just, this is just more of the union staff. I shouldn't say because Tim is union as well, but it's non-management staff, I should say.
Gotcha.
But it is town staff. It's not private contractors.
Well, it could be either town staff or outside staff.
No, it's completely town staff.
Correct.
Oh,
There's another line item further down, snow removal contracts. Those would be the private contractors.
Correct.
okay. I'm just trying to understand. That's I'm not questioning anything. I'm just trying to understand how you look at each one of those lines, so I can tell the same type of story and understand.
I think the biggest thing is the overtime is for the town staff, specifically snow and ice operations. And then the third line down on the personnel services is snow removal contracts. That's specific to hiring private contractors during an event.
Okay. And I'm just carrying forward on Mr. Howard's observation of overtime and how that number might, quote unquote, maybe inflate the overtime picture, where it is actually kind of telling the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think this situation is probably a little bit different. This overtime is, we call in as many DPW employees that we can get, in particular during a snowstorm. Not everybody comes in. So there's really no way of, that number is what the number is. You know, if we can't get enough people in, then we then resort to these snow removal contracts and get private contractors in. So this isn't really overtime as a result of lack of employees, because quite often this is outside of normal work hours. And, you know, if we have 110 DPW employees, we might get, I don't know, Tim, maybe 50 employees during a full event.
Correct.
Right. So again, I mean, a big number like that, you have absolutely no control of. That has everything to do with Mother Nature, and it is a significant number that hits that overtime, general
If I can
overtime.
just speak up a little bit at this point. We've had 11 events, believe it or not, this winter already, which, you know, small, minor events, but it's still, you know, called to have staff in and some contractors at that point. We're at, you know, we've already about 141 just in overtime salaries right now from 11 events.
141,000, Tim?
Almost 141. It's 147.87.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, again, for us to go out and treat the town properly, so every road is safe, you're talking, we have anywhere between 30 and 40 sanders out at one time.
Wow.
So it does, you know, that's if we have to call in some of the contractors too. But just town vehicles for sanding, you're around 30 to 35.
So I'm going to be very sensitive from now on about that number there, and the fact that what if we had a real snow event?
Oh, yeah.
So that, and by the way, it's completely out of your control, and it does
very hard to
impact.
pinpoint what we need until
Absolutely.
until it happens. You know, I mean, we only go by what the weather channels and our computers say. So I mean, there's been times where we had people here and it starts to rain, and you know, so again, like you said, Mother Nature's a very hard one to pick.
One thing I will add, though, if we do have a major storm event, as you probably know, quite often we do get FEMA reimbursement for those types of storms. So we monitor, obviously, the equipment that's used, the staff that's working those storms, because if we get 2 feet of snow or more, we know that it's a strong likelihood we may get FEMA reimbursement for that snow event. So we do track it in hopes of getting reimbursed for that storm.
Okay. Thank you so much for helping me on that.
You're welcome.
Mr. Young. Can't hear you, sir.
Could you tell me what's the difference in cost between a town employee on overtime and a private contractor who comes in, say, at night to do the storms? What's the difference in cost?
I can give you a rough number, and Tim,
Yeah, just rough. Sure. I'm just curious.
Let's see, just pick up my calculator because you're asking an engineer. Town employee, you're probably somewhere, depending on what the hourly rate is, somewhere around $50 to $55 an hour if it's at a time and a half rate.
Okay.
If it's a private contractor, depends on what size truck they have, but that could be anywhere, and I'm gonna give you rough numbers.
Yeah.
From $100 an hour for or $90 to $100 an hour for a pickup truck plowing, to maybe $140 for a large 6-wheel dump truck.
Correct.
Tim, those numbers in the ballpark?
Yeah, you're right in the ballpark, Bill. Yep.
So it's more beneficial to have the town employees doing it on,
Most
that's cheaper, right?
Right, but we
Is it-
don't,
yeah.
again,
I've always wondered, that's why I asked.
Yeah, no, we call the contractors as needed, but, generally we try to get away with using what we have as far as the sanders go. When it comes to the plowing, we definitely have to call in contractors because we don't have enough, vehicles. I mean, we have 120 contractors. So,
Wow.
so
a
we
lot.
have to go to a major plowing event, which we haven't. It's been mostly sanding this year, salting. We have used an amount of material, but we've scaved the plowing aspect, so
Come on, spring. Wait for spring. Thank you.
you're welcome.
So I do have a question on the $55 an hour number. Is that fully loaded, meaning it includes the cost of the truck and the de-icing materials and things like that, which does come with the contractor price?
Yeah, no, that's just, that would just be their salaries,
Okay, so
but the contractor,
I just
yes,
wanted to point that out, that that's not the entire cost
correct,
when you compare it against a contractor, and it's
But-
quite possible the contractor may be not that bad of a deal when you fully load the cost.
correct.
Well, keep in mind, the contractor is loaded with our salt, so they're not providing the material.
Okay, but they are providing the vehicle and maintaining it,
And their
all the
fuel and
capital
everything else,
expenses
correct.
associated with that. And if we were to hire, if we were not to hire contractors, the town would probably have to buy more equipment. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, but I can also say in the 30 years that I've been here, it's getting harder and harder every year to get contractors.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
of the price of the equipment, price of insurance, the whole, like everything else is going sky high, so it's harder for them too, so.
Great. All right. Are there any further questions? If not, would someone care to make a motion to approve this budget as presented?
Motion to approve budget, Mr. Chairman.
All right, Mr. Lawler moves.
I'll second.
Mr. Young seconds. All right, for the vote, Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Lawler,
Yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes.
I vote yes as well, unanimous. All right, great. Fleet.
Sorry, I must have jumped over fleet. Okay, fleet, as you can see, there's a decrease in the salaries. I think that's primarily due to the loss of some more senior positions. So as we fill the positions, they'll be more junior level in terms of starting out at step one. So would be a decrease in this salary line item. And also would be a decrease in the longevity pay as well because of that. So we would decrease of just over 8% in personnel services. There was an increase in the meetings and education and training account. That was from 2,000 to 5,000. And that one I would defer to Jody if she can give specifics, but I'm assuming that's because as we hire new people, they're going to need additional training. But if there's anything else to add to that, she can certainly jump in and add, but I expect that would probably be the case.
It's actually for, if I can jump in, Bill, it's actually for the electric vehicle training because the towns has decided to get a fleet of electric vehicles and our mechanics are not trained on that yet. So that's why we increased that line item.
Okay, thank you, Jody.
Sure.
And to that point, we now have, I believe, about 9 electric vehicles in our fleet. So we do need to get the mechanics as they come on board trained to work on electric vehicles. Beyond that, you go to the overall budget for the fleet was down 1.5%.
Thank you, Mr. Coyle and Jody, or Ms. Volta. Mr. Howard.
I was a little surprised that there was no change to the vehicle fuel numbers, the bottom 3 rows. Just want to make sure that that's intentional.
Well, keep in mind, we now have, I want to say, probably about 12% of the fleet is now electric.
So that helps.
Does help, yes.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Particularly as we start looking at future fiscal years, year over year. You might want to think about, unless we continue to increase the electric vehicle fleet, you know, what's the impact on increases to fuel costs? That's it. Thank you.
As you know, that's hard to predict. Last year, I think fuel was more than this year. We're running a little lower, so it definitely fluctuates. But I think with the electric vehicles, that's probably helping to keep that number down a little bit. But we'll continue to monitor it and try to do our best to predict what might happen in the economy with fuel. It is difficult to say.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? Would someone like to move?
Move to approve.
Okay, second?
Second,
That was Mr. Lawler. Any further discussion? Mr. Howard, how do you vote?
Vote yes.
Mr. Lawler,
yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Solid waste.
Okay, solid waste. This one of probably particular interest is the very first line, the salaries and wages line item, permanent employees. So what we did this year was the administrator that was working in this division previously was handling solid waste and the fleet budget as well. Jody is now taking over the fleet budget so that the solid waste position can focus more time on solid waste operations. So that line item was increased so that this person's duties would be focusing strictly on solid waste activities and functions. I believe there was some talk of creating a solid waste, I think a manager type position. We did not do that, but I think the goal is the hopes would be that this person could fulfill a lot of those needs going forward. So that's why you'll see a change of $17,592 in that line item.
All right.
And
Any
beyond,
questions?
I'm sorry, beyond that, the only
All right.
change would be the landfill monitoring. Looks like we're projecting an increase on those are consultant fees to monitor the water and gas from our landfills, which are obviously closed, but we have to monitor them going forward for many years.
Thank you. I was going to ask that question. So very
So
good.
was I. So it's not security, it's water and gas coming out of the landfill.
Right,
Right.
methane, gas, and then
Yep.
water. They do sampling typically quarterly for gas and twice a year for water.
I just wanted to comment on the take something, leave something program.
Yes.
I've seen this be quite successful in a number of other towns on the South Shore. So I'm delighted that we're looking to add this program to our solid waste processing. Just
Yes, that's something that when we're working on the budget, I can tell you I don't have the exact details figured out yet. But I thought that if I don't get it in the budget, then it's going to be another year and a half before we can even think about it. So we did factor that into solid waste, and the goal would be to have a part-time town employee working at initially Saturday and potentially Sunday as well. And we're hoping to get volunteers to also help with the initiative. So it's something we don't have the exact details of, where it's going to be established and how it's going to operate, but we wanted to get it in a budget so that as we move forward, we can plan those details out.
All right.
I'm delighted to see that added to as a program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Any further questions from members? All right. Would someone care to move this motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Okay, second,
Second,
that was Mr. Lawler. All right, Mr. Howard, how do you vote?
I vote yes.
Mr. Lawler,
yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and I vote yes as
Oh.
well. Unanimous.
Bill, do the compost bin fall under solid waste? I was wondering where that is that a revolving fund?
Yes, Jody, I know those are the small, the black composters that you can purchase for your own property. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, I think that's covered in the revolving fund. I just want to make sure we address that.
Yes, it's a revolving fund.
And is that under solid waste?
It is under solid waste, but it more falls under the transfer station solid waste. It doesn't have a cost. We buy them, then we charge
Right.
exactly what we get.
Yeah, that's the nature of the revolving fund.
Right. So it doesn't really fall under, it's under solid waste, but it's really not.
The transfer station is an enterprise fund, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, so are the compost bins under the enterprise fund? Is that what you're saying? Is the revolving fund also under enterprise? I guess.
I would say it is under but it's its own. It's a revolving account, so it doesn't really have a department that it falls under.
Got it.
Solid waste.
The net zero, so I don't, whether it's under the enterprise or not, probably doesn't matter too much.
Doesn't matter too much.
Nothing's generated.
As long as it's operating as intended, then it's fine. Good, okay.
All righty. Jeanette, I think I see a hand there.
Yes, I just wanted to let you know that they are not asking for any funding for the compost bin for this year, so I believe the program is on hold.
I think we have, Jody, I think we have compost bins here still. So I think they're available, because I saw one picked up about a month ago.
Yes, we have plenty. So I think that's why we didn't request any funds this year. And we can use our RFP funds for the compost bins. So we were considering using those funds instead.
So specifically, you're referring to the $14,000. It's not in this year's request, correct?
I'm talking about the revolving fund, so they may be selling the product they have on hand, but they're not requesting any spending for FY25. So they wouldn't be purchasing new ones.
Got it. All right, any further questions? We've already voted on this motion, so we'll move on to the crematory division. And who is speaking to that?
I have Diane Dwyer is here. She is the cemetery and crematory superintendent. And I think for the most part, it's really level funded. If anything, there is a decrease in the so Diane, if you have anything to add, it's a 1.3% decrease in personnel services, and overall budget is 1.1% decrease.
And is DWYER?
Say that again.
Right.
For Diane?
I'm sorry?
Yeah.
What was your question?
MAGUIR.
IRE.
Oh, Mugwire. Okay.
Mugwire, yeah.
Sorry, hard to hear. Great. Would you care to speak to the budget at all?
The crematory budget is basically unchanged. As Bill mentioned, I've been the acting superintendent since the former superintendent left in last April. So just this week, I was approved for the permanency in the position. So
Congratulations.
thank you. So the crematory is running smoothly. We're right where we need to be. There really isn't anything new to report.
Okay. Any questions from committee members?
I guess I didn't realize that you provide services for funeral homes in the surrounding areas as well, so.
We do.
Yeah.
There is not a crematory on Cape Cod, surprisingly. So we have a lot of business from Cape Cod and, of course, the surrounding Plymouth area.
Okay. Further questions? If not, I certainly entertain a motion to approve as presented.
Move to approve.
All right,
Second,
Howard and Lawler combination. Okay, great. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Lawler,
yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and Mr. Lally. Yeah, well, I voted well. Thank you very much.
Okay, and again, there is a revolving fund for this, is it cemetery or? It's
Crematory.
different. Okay, so we'll get to that in a minute.
And the cemetery.
Okay, the cemetery, again, Diane is the superintendent for cemetery as well. And there was an increase in the line item for salaries and wages. And based on the number, and Diane, you might have to jump in on this one. I'm assuming that's an additional staff member, because it's an increase of $47,000.
Right. Yeah, so the field staff is completely, we're at full staff, which is the first time in my tenure here. I've been here since 2009. So the only position that we have vacant is my old position, which is the administrative assistant position. So I'm gonna, now that I'm in permanently, I'll be checking in with Bill on when would be a good time to fill that position. But that would be, yes, we have filled finally all of our labor positions.
It looks like the other line items below for expenses are level funded.
They are, yes.
All right. Any questions from the committee members?
Move to approve.
All right, Mr. Howard moves.
I'll second.
Mr. Young, let's turn things up. Seconds. Any further discussion?
Keeping them guessing, Joe.
All right, Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Lawler,
Yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. Thank you very much. And congratulations, Ms. McGuire.
Thanks.
All right. Last but not least is Parks and Forestry. Who is
Right.
speaking to that?
And Nick Biella is here as well. He's the Parks and Forestry Superintendent. This budget is fairly level funded. In fact, it's personnel services is only a 0.1% increase. In the overall budget is a total of 0.4%. Not much change from the previous year. But if you do have any questions, I'm sure Nick will be happy to answer them.
In the last paragraph of the narrative, it addresses the planting of trees. I wanted to know how many trees have been planted by Parks and Forestry.
Okay, sure. So,
Nick, do you keep track of that on a year-to-year basis?
yes, so we're actually on our 34th consecutive year of being what's called a tree city. And the way we become a tree city, or the way we get it each year, is by planting a certain amount of trees, by pruning a certain amount of trees, removing trees, having an Arbor Day celebration. There's a bunch of different factors that are in when putting in your application. I believe last year it was around, or this past fiscal year was around 20 that we planted. However, when we do Arbor Day, we give out several hundred saplings. I believe this Arbor Day we're going to give out about 550 saplings of different native trees. We give them out. An elementary school is selected each year, different elementary school. We hand out these trees, they plant them. So if you wanted to include those, which I don't in my Tree City application, but well over 500 a year. But we we try to plant trees if we remove trees in, you know, an aesthetically pleasing, appropriate area.
Yeah, trees have such a positive impact on the town, the way the town looks, and on air quality. Not the least of which was my father was a dendrologist professionally, so I'm really into trees and glad to see that we're continuing to plant. If anything, I think we could be more aggressive in planting new trees. Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions from the committee? Hearing none.
Move to approve.
All right, and second?
Second,
All right. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Howard,
Yes.
Mr. Lawler,
yes.
Mr. Young,
Yes,
and I vote yes as well. I think this brings us to the end of our regularly scheduled program. And is there any comment from the public? I don't think we have any public. Is there anything else from the board or the committee members before we move towards a judgment? Although I have something I want to say after giving you a chance to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Howard.
Bill, did I correctly see that your department is tracking equipment more closely going forward? Can you?
So, yeah, what we want to do, and you know, we've discussed it, and it's a matter of time before with James Downey being the assistant DPW director, one of his roles as we fill his engineering position will be to take a look at an inventory of all of our rolling stock and categorize what year a six-wheel dump truck was purchased, say in 2015. And we want to take a look at if we schedule that for replacement 15 years out. So that'll be scheduled in 2030 with a projected cost. You're typically going to get probably 17 years, you're kind of pushing it. So if you program it for 15 years, it takes about 2 years when you order a six-wheel dump truck before you actually see that truck on the lot. So we want to look at, and then regular F-350 type trucks, you know, 1-ton dump trucks, schedule those for maybe a 12-year, or look at what we're getting for a life out of them. Maybe 15 is pushing it. And just coming up with what the annual cost would be going forward, so that we're looking beyond 10 years, we're looking more like 15 to close to 20 years out, because our trucks last more than 10 years. We want to get an idea of where are we with the replacement. We have some trucks that are 2007s that we're still operating. Some of them have been sidelined and taken offline. But for us, it makes more sense to look at an annual replacement cost of our equipment versus replacing 6 dump trucks in 1 year and then doing 1 or 2 the next year, and then you don't have a consistent cost for equipment replacement.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing that analysis. And when you do obsolete a rolling stock that is being sold at auction or appropriately, right?
Correct, will be auctioned off.
Very good, thank you, Joe. That's it for me.
Right.
Nice job, Bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Young, any comments, questions?
I just want to thank all the department heads. Since moving to town, one of the things we've noticed, me and my wife and my family have noticed how, I know there's a lot of talk about the streets, but we were concerned with storms being this far away, and 6 years, I've never been stuck. Like, I've been able to get where I needed to go when we needed to get there. Along with, I've seen fire trucks and police cars be able to get around. So we're satisfied and impressed with the job you do, and please pass on to your employees how much we appreciate it.
You took the words right out of my mouth, Mr. Young. So great. For committee members, I'm hoping that I'm going to try to get a draft of the meeting minutes out, as well as a draft of the presentation that will be made at A&F sometime in February to you. My goal is to have it to you by Monday morning. We'll see how that goes. So, so I thank you all for your time, and again, thank the staff for being here today. And with that, I'll certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second,
All right. Mr. Howard.
Yes.
Further, excuse me, any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Howard.
Yes.
All right, Mr. Lawler,
yes.
Mr. Young.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Thanks,
We are
Joe.
adjourned.
Yo.